What's going on, Badger fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Badgers. We're going to sound the recruiting cannons, have a big offensive lineman commit to talk about, plus some interesting discussion about the receiving pecking order. Where does DK and some of the returning guys fit into that depth chart coming up this year? And surprise basketball players who might surprise us this year for the Wisconsin Badgers basketball team. We're going to talk about all that and more on today's Locked On Badgers. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. I hope everyone had a great 4th of July. We're going to have a fun show today, have someone new on the show, get 3 people on here. We're going to bring Justin, Cannon as well, jumping on the show. Cannon's been on the Discord a long time. Cannon, first time on the show, man. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I love it, man. We're always about trying to get new voices on the show. I talked about that a lot. If you're on the Discord, reach out to me. If you're on Twitter, reach out to me. I would love to interact and get new opinions and voices on. I think that's how we build the community. I think we get smarter that way. And Cannon, you're on a good first show because we get to sound the cannons. We got a commitment to talk about. Let's go.
Fire the recruiting cannons. Another one is headed to Madison on Wisconsin.
So let's start here. Emerson Mandell commits, 4-star offensive lineman out of Minnesota, the number 1 player out of Minnesota, 6'5", 300 pounds. Justin, I'm going to let you kick this one off because you saw his film before I did. You've been raving about him. What do you see about Emerson that you like here?
I absolutely love the pickup. I think he's a very athletic, big guy. You watch film and you hear that all the time where people talk about, oh, he's a great athlete at his size. Mandell is a great athlete at his size. He's a guy that is potentially, I looked at him and I know he's being projected as a guard. And I look at it and I'm like, this guy, he moves very, very well for his size. Like he legitimately can play tackle if they wanted him to start there. He's not quite the size of some of the guys we've taken at tackle. I actually like him in the interior. He's a very athletic guy for the interior guard spot, which is going to give you a lot of flexibility of things you can do. He's very nasty, strong, and he finishes blocks. This is a guy that I think he has the type of talent that you look at and you're like, he could be redshirt freshman, come in and start potentially. Like you give him a year to go in the weight room. I think that he's got the physical tools that he's a guy that can go out there with some technique work and be a very productive player early for this team.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. This makes it better. He's from Minnesota. I mean, Come on now. Like, we just went in to snag them. But, I mean, on his film, not much pass protection. Didn't really see much of that. Might be because they run the ball a lot. But I think he slots better at the guard. I mean, he's a mauler, just running through blocks. Nobody can stand him. But, yeah, he's from Minnesota, so that just makes it even better.
Yeah, I like the fact that that is true too. The Minnesota factor is great, and we really they took Roy from us, we took Mandell from them. Both schools wanted each. Like this is not a case where Minnesota cooled on Mandell or Wisconsin cooled on Roy. It's just kind of an interesting flip flop of offensive linemen there. Justin, how many times in Cannon as well do you see a high school offensive lineman, you say, man, he's got to work on his technique? I actually think Mandell's technique is really good for a high school offensive lineman. He stays low, he fires off the ball.
It's the athleticism. Yeah. He really fires off. He's got a very quick first step for a big man. And that's why I kind of like the idea of him at a tackle. Because it's like, this is a guy that if he can really get that drop step and pass sets, like he's going to be a guy it's hard to get around because he's got the feet where you look at him and this is a guy that's going to just sit there and stay in front of people. And to get back on it, with the Minnesota thing, like I look at this and, Roy going over there, that's a loss, but if you look at the guys that Wisconsin got, like the guys that are 2 most likely to potentially project to the NFL might be Corey and Mandell. And that might be out of everybody that we've seen from their targets. I mean, those are 2 guys that I could legitimately see being NFL guards, 3 years, 4 years, if you give them a redshirt year from now.
Yeah. I love Corey.
I'd agree. I think his technique for run blocking is amazing. I mean, he's just running through people. I can't really speak on his pass block because, like I said, there wasn't much in there. So I mean,
he's going to learn real quick.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he's got the physical tools. I agree with him. I mean, give him a year to get in the weight room. I think he could start redshirt freshman year.
You guys ever see the like Nat Geo shows where like a lion is chasing down a little baby impala or something, whatever it is? Like there's a clip on Mandell's film. It's like a nature channel with a grizzly bear chasing down like something running away. He just buries a
hiker that's trying to run away with a Snickers bar in his hand.
35 yards past the line of scrimmage, and he is driving this defensive back into the dirt. It's like watching a grizzly bear toying with a coyote or something.
He's a big boy.
He finishes blocks, Justin, to your point. Like he just doesn't he grinds them into the dirt. It's incredible. Now, I do think, to your point, Ken, and you brought this up, and I think it's really a really good point, is just about every clip we see of him is run block. Like run block, drive off the line, angle block. We really don't know what he's like in pass sets because there's just not much of it at all on his huddle film. So we'll have to see. I mean, I'd like to reach out to maybe his coach and kind of see what the feel is there, but that is a question mark in my opinion. But he's got a college-ready body almost right now. That's the other thing. We talked about Sexton, Roy, both players I love, but you got to project those guys a little bit more. This guy's already carrying 300 pounds, like really well.
I agree completely. I mean, the interesting thing, like we were talking about, is with him with pass sets, you look at it and it's something he's going to have to work on. The athleticism is definitely there. But you look at it and like, it's really nice to see Wisconsin moving back towards traditional interior guys. Like we're starting to get a few of those guys that are 6'4", that have good feet, that can move around in the interior, that aren't necessarily, and not that the guys that we had were finesse guys, but like these are guys that you look at and you're like, okay, I could see him being in there and just mauling people in the interior. And they're not so long and they're not so tall that smaller defensive linemen are going to get under them and cause problems. So it's nice to see us kind of get to a point where it's like we're getting guys that project better for that interior.
I agree with Justin's point. Yeah, I like it much better to have, shorter guards because, taller guards, that causes problems for them. Shorter defensive linemen, like you said, give them fits, and it could really disrupt our run game if, we don't have guards that can block both big and small tackles.
Yeah. I'm going to third that. That's something I talked to John McNamara when he's on the show too. And John's like, what, you don't like 6'8" offensive guards? Like, no, nobody does.
No.
That's why they're not in the NFL.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like, that's why 6'3" and 6'4" guards get drafted.
When was the last time you saw a guard in the NFL over 6'6"?
Like,
I don't think I've ever seen one.
Over 6'6", it's tough.
Yeah, even over 6'5", normally they don't go.
Yeah.
That's not seen very often.
Let's shift here really quick, and then we're gonna get into some other things. There was a lot of consternation. We talked about in the show about where's the offensive line class going to finish, missing out on several targets. I think they've rebounded really well.
They've rebounded amazing. Like at the start, I thought it was gonna be bad. Like I didn't think, kind of like our D line is right now. I didn't think it was gonna be good, but sorry, I hit the D line, but that we need to get that up. That's just not good at all. But we've really rebounded, and I'm actually super excited for this O-line class. I think it's amazing. I think it's good how it is. I don't know about you guys, but I think we're good. I think we're set.
Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna weigh in a little bit on that, just the difference between the two. Honestly, I think that Bicknell proved a lot with this last little bit here. But what I will say is, from the defensive line, a lot of people are getting frustrated with that. It is the hardest position in college football to recruit, and there are the least amount of players at that position to go after. And there's people I've heard say, well, we can go in the portal and get these guys. No, you're not going to get difference makers in the portal. You have to get those guys out of high school, because those guys that are studs that are coming out of high school, they're not leaving the team that they're on. Like, you might find a winning lottery ticket 1 out of 10 if you pull guys from the portal for defensive line.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, you get a guy who's a rotational piece. Or a guy who's a specialist. Like we got Varner and Petroski this coming in. Petroski's going to probably be an outside linebacker. He may be good as a pass rush guy, and I think he can actually. He's big enough where he may hold up as on the run too to be able to hold the edge. Varner's probably going to be a pass rush specialist. I'm not sure that he's going to be big enough to be a guy that you want out there in normal run sets on a 1st and 10, because he's a little undersized. He's like 6'2". It's going to be about 270, 275 maximum probably. And that's asking a lot for the guy with that size. Like, if you get a tackle that gets under him, he's going to have a problem. He's going to get just pushed down the line because he doesn't have the weight to carry it. Now, if we get a couple of freaks, that's where you're talking about those guys. Like, even in this cycle, I look at it and it's like, they don't have to be a 4-star guy. you can find that 6'5" guy that's 220 right now that you think you can put 50 pounds on and that is really twitchy, you might be able to get a guy that in a few years is ready to play. But I don't think that you have to get 4 stars. They're just going to be able to play a lot sooner if they are, because normally they're in that 250 range.
I agree. I mean, you look at most D-line recruits and you look at the top 10 and their offer list is insane. Like they're going to have all the top teams are going to try to get them. I mean, you look at what David Stone Jr., he has pretty much any offer you want is on that list. Justin Scott, like all them big names, like you're going to have to be battling the top schools to get them. And I think we'll get there eventually, but right now we're not.
Yeah, it's a tough cycle so far. And honestly, there's really not a lot of lighthouses on the horizon. If the obvious ones, at least for defensive line recruiting, that other than Liam Andrews, there's not a lot there right now that we know of.
I know you need to take a break here in a second. What I will say on this is that with the way this cycle is playing out, there's going to be a lot of flips. And I'm not even just talking Wisconsin. I'm talking in general. This is the most commits that have been in a cycle that they were talking about. They're like, this is borderline December, the type of commits that we've seen over the month of June. And it's going to be really hard for teams to hold on to those guys late into the cycle, especially if your team starts playing poorly.
Well, and let's take a break there because we do gotta let's talk some receivers. Let's talk DK. There's an interesting, I don't want to say disagreement, but yeah, a little bit of a disagreement what his role could be on this team. We're going to talk about that next on Locked On Badgers. But first, today's show is brought to you by our good friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline remains our number one sportsbook place we go to for all of our sports betting needs. I've already talked about my futures, Niners, Suns, Braves. You know I'm taking the Niners to sweep the NFC West again. I know Cannon is listening to this. Beat Seattle twice last year. They're going to sweep the NFC West again. I'm taking the Niners to win the Super Bowl, Braves to win the World Series, and, of course, the Suns to win the finals. We got Bradley Beal. We got a 3-headed monster now. Let's go. And I do it all on FanDuel, FanDuel.com/lockedon. New customers get that no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. All your sports betting needs, safe, secure, super easy to use. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Again, I want to say thank you for everybody tuning in. I really do appreciate it. Let's get back into the show. Let's get Justin back on. Let's get Cannon back on.
And Gino we trust.
Yeah, okay.
Gino we trust.
Let's see how well that works. Let's talk this because this is actually something Justin and I disagreed with a little bit, talking about just offline, and then Cannon and Justin disagree a little bit. Let's talk DK. So a bunch of new receivers into the offense. Phil Longo coming here. Obviously, Bryson Green, CJ Williams, Will Pauling. Certainly 3-4 receivers coming back from last year, including Chris Brooks, who, Cannon, I know you're pretty high on as well. Where does DK fit in this pecking order? And Cannon, I'm going to let you kick this off.
All right, yeah.
Look, he's excited. Let's go.
I think he's our wide receiver one. I think until proven otherwise, he's the number one guy. I mean, was the number one guy last year in a run-heavy first offense with Graham Mertz at quarterback. Let's just start there. And I think he does everything well. He does everything well. I don't think there's a weak point in his game. I don't think he's not slow. He can catch the ball. He runs good routes. And I think he's your guy. If you have a 3rd down and 7 and you need a first down, you go to him. You're not. I mean, I'm not expecting him to take a slant 90 yards to the house because that's not his game. That's not his game. That's more of a Pauling thing. I think that's what Pauling brings us. I think DK just brings you a mix of everything. And I think he's our wide receiver one as of right now until somebody on the team can come out and prove me otherwise.
And I took a look at this, and this was the argument that I kind of made when we discussed this in the Discord aggressively for a long period of time.
I didn't even know it was Justin.
So here's my view on DK. I really like him as a guy who kind of he sets your baseline for the wide receiver position. I think he does a lot of things really well. I think he's a guy that you can count on for certain numbers in a game, but I don't know if he's a guy that I have seen yet that can go out there. And if I have a play on a 3rd and 5 where the defender really plays it well, that I can see him make a play. And that's what I need to see from him. I need to see that. That's what, when I talk wide receiver one, I know this guy, if I say out there, we need this play to win this game, can go out there and make that. And I've seen some of those things from Green in his highlights where he makes a freakish play where he just just basically out physicals the cornerback.
Mm-hmm.
I think CJ has some of that ability. It has not been proven yet. That is something that I'll say there. I think he's got the highest upside of any receiver we have, but he's got to prove it. I think Pauling gives you something from he's a guy that I look at that I think him and Lewis, it's going to be the comparison where you look at and it's like, which one of these guys ends up being the deep threat? But you break out the room. Ryan and I have discussed this. I still think Trech is going to end up with a package somewhere. I just think that from the type of things that he provides, I just don't think we have a guy on the roster that moves like him and creates that type of easy separation. And we'll see if it projects at the college level the same way it did in high school. But I watched a guy who was a solid route runner in high school, but maybe not elite, but was so physically gifted that he would create easy separation every route he ran against some of the best talent in the country when he was playing in high school.
No, Trech is awesome. I just think the numbers are tough for him.
Yeah, it is going to be tough. He's going to have to play amazing in fall camp.
If he had enrolled early, too, that's the other thing. Like, it's just here's the thing with DK, and I think at times calling someone well-rounded, like it feels like
a backhanded compliment,
damning with faint praise a little bit, backhanded compliment. But that's well-rounded is a really good thing. Like, Chimere is dependable. Let's start there. Dependable, durable, right? He's on the field, really good hands. I wouldn't call them elite, but I would call really, really good hands, a good route runner, a good body. We're talking 6'2", 200. And according to Brady Collins, he's running a 4.45. Like, he's checking a lot of boxes at this point if he has 4.45 speed with that frame, with his hands, and with his football dependability. Like, he's a consistent guy. We can count on Chimere, right? If you throw him a slant pass to Cannon, your point, he's going to catch that pass. So, Justin, I do agree with you. I don't think he has the upside of a CJ Williams, but I don't know if CJ Williams has the floor of a Chimere Dike.
I would agree with that. My point has more to do with the fact that if I have a guy that can go, like a number one receiver to me is the guy that you count on to go get you a win when you need a win. And I don't it's probably Green out of this group. Like, he's the guy I look at that I'm like, this is the guy that if we need a play later on in the season, and we didn't see it obviously in spring ball because he was out with a shoulder issue, but he's a guy that I think our corners are going to have fits with because he's just going to go out there and he's just going to abuse them. Like, we've talked about Quintez Cephas as the last great Badger receiver, and he's the closest thing to that we've had. Like, he's a guy who's big, a guy who can be very physical. He actually has pretty good speed. I would say he's probably a 4.5 guy. I don't think he's a burner, but I think he's a guy who, with his size, runs well enough that he's a problem for corners because he's going to probably abuse you physically if push comes to shove on a 50-50 ball.
Yeah, I mean,
really quick, Tim, before you jump in, I want you to get to this. If anyone sees me put my hands in my camera,
you're trying to focus the camera.
I'm not doing talk to the hand, Justin. I promise. I'm trying to focus my camera, which suddenly unfocused.
He's playing peekaboo.
I'm like, talk to the hand, Justin. I don't want to hear it. No, I'm just trying to get my camera to focus. I realized that might have come off incorrectly. All right, go, Kenneth. Sorry.
That's another thing is like, depending on who we're facing and what that team views our best receiver as, there may be some games where DK has the number one corner on them, and other people have the second and third. And there'll be games where DK might have the third, they might have the third corner on him or the second corner. And I feel like that is another thing is there might be games where Bryson goes for 150 yards or DK goes for 100 yards. I mean, we're going to be everywhere. And I think there'll be some packages for Trench. I don't know how playtime is going to be. I mean, he has Bell and Pauling.
I don't think it's going to be the first few weeks of the season. He's going to have to earn it. I would say you're probably looking big, maybe like week 4 or 5. They might sprinkle him in there a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he's a great route runner. I think he's almost borderline elite. And I mean, he was doing it against top competition. I mean, I can't remember what high school he went to. I think Bosco, is where he went. Is that correct?
Well, he started off in East St. Louis, which is the Hawaii pipeline, and then he went to Bishop Gorman. Right?
Yeah, Bishop Gorman.
Bishop Gorman.
Both of those high schools, by the way,
that's basically the top high school in the country.
And Bishop Gorman is a top. I mean, that's a top dog.
They play a national schedule.
Yeah. They're playing the Mater Days. They're playing the IMG. Yeah, he's doing it against competition, and he was the leading receiver by a
his numbers were freakish.
He led that team.
Yeah, I just think he's a year away.
I don't know how.
And that could be right. I won't argue that.
No, that's a nonsense ring. That's a 4-star all day.
Ryan and I talked about that when he originally committed to Wisconsin. I said this is a 4-star guy. Like, you watch the start and stop ability that he has. I watched his camp video, and the guy who was across from him was just like, I don't know what to do with this dude. Like, he just passed me in like a half a second.
What do you do? I mean, what do you do?
The guy that was across from him looked like he was a guy who had just picked up an Xbox controller the first time and didn't understand how to move his guy. And the guy was like jerking around. He had no chance against Stretch.
You just don't. I mean,
he's a legit 4-5 guy too. He's run a 10-9 high school 100.
That's fast. I mean,
laser time.
That's up there. Like,
let's finish the receiver discussion here. Give me your really quick. We're not going to hold anybody to it, but I'm going to hold you to it. Top 4 receivers in terms of yardage this year. What is your early projection?
Justin, you can take it first.
Sure. Bryson Green, number 1. I would say Dike probably falls into number 2. I think Williams is probably going to be in the 3 spot, and I think Pauling will probably be. I look at it this way. I'm just to make it simple. We could see one guy with around 600 yards and like 4 or 5 guys that are going to be in that 300 to 400 yard range, which is, I think, what may happen. They're going to package together guys that they think are going to be the best fit against a certain team.
I'd have to go DK 1. I think Green's 2. Those 2 are 1A and 1B. I would lean DK, but wouldn't surprise me if Green got there. 3, I'd probably say Pauling. I think Pauling will be up there. And 4, I think Lewis. I think Keontae Lewis. I think he ends up getting a little bit more snaps than Bell in the end, and I think he'll edge Bell out a little bit.
So I'm close to you. I guess I'm not actually. I have a mix of both of you now that I realize it. So I have Bryson Green. I think the injury thing is a little. I wish he would have got on the field earlier. I think he's 1. I think he's the number 1 guy. Then I have DK. Then I have Pauling. So right there, I'm with you. And at the 4 spot, I don't think it's Lewis. I think Lewis is more of a specialist. Like he's a seam guy, run deep, vertical, and we're going to hit you for a couple big plays, and we're going to take the umbrella off the defense and make safety scared to death. But I don't think you're going to get a lot of volume out of him. I think it's more to create spacing.
It's going to be big play ability.
I think so. And I think it really just creates vertical depth in the defense.
And that's why I had him, is because I think there'll be enough of those big plays where he'll be able to rack up. He'll be able to rack up enough yardage.
I'm here for it, man. If we get a bunch of that would be amazing. But I think my 4, I'm going to go back to Skylar Bell. I think that's where I'm at right now. But I love having options.
Does anybody know what Bell's 40 time is?
I think he's probably in the low 4.5s or probably high 4.4s.
I would say
he, for some reason, like last year, it seems like he got hawked a little bit a couple times. Yeah. I don't know if that's just me looking at that, but
I would say 4.5s in that range.
It's going to be interesting to see if these guys look like they have a little bit more of a gear this year. I'm curious if guys got faster, because it's been a while since I've looked at Badger receivers where I'm like, that guy's got jets.
See, Bell's one of those guys I look at. He's more quick than he is fast. Like he's more like shifty out of like breaks.
Yeah, he's a physical dude. Now his hands have to get better. Like Bell has to catch the ball.
Yeah, they do.
But he's a physical.
He could have been our leading receiver last year if he would have hung out of the football.
All right, we got to take a quick break there. We're going to come back. We're going to talk a player on the basketball team that you think is going to exceed expectations this year. We're going to do that next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show. And a quick second to say thank you to everybody tuning in. Y'all are amazing and incredible. And it's still very humbling to me that anybody listens to what we're doing or what I'm doing. Not Justin and Cannon and Rajiv. Those guys are worth listening to. I don't know what you're doing listening to me. But it is very appreciated. So thank you. All right, let's get Justin and Cannon back on. Let's start here. So Justin, you let off one. Ken, you let off one. I'll lead off this one. Basketball player that you think is going to exceed expectations or have a much better year than people think. I'm going to go Gus Yalden. Like again, like this has been my guy. I know, but here's the thing. I keep hearing people say not ready, freshman, undersized. Cannon's one of those people. All I can say is he's coming in with advanced footwork. He's coming in with a roster that needs somebody in the front court to step in. Hello, Carter Gilmore minutes last year. They desperately need somebody to play. It just is what it is. There's not anybody in the transfer portal they brought in to fill those minutes. So who's going to get those minutes? Is it going to be Nolan Winter, the guy who probably still needs a little more physical development and didn't play the level of competition Gus Yalden played? Or is it going to be Gus Yalden, the more physical developed player who played a better level of high school competition and quite frankly busted his butt to get in even better shape coming into Madison? I'm telling you right now, Yalden is going to be a serviceable big next year in our front court. I'm not saying he's averaging 15. I'm not saying he's averaging even 10, but a serviceable rotation player that they're going to count on every game.
You want me to come in white hot on this one?
You do you. Whoever
I
you
got it
want.
right last year with Connor. I'm also saying Gus, and I'm going to say, so Gus, if you're out there listening, I'm giving you some kudos here, buddy, because I know I know you take this stuff and you get the chip, and I respect that. But I actually think you're going to play really well this year. I think there's a chance he gets in the 8-9 point per game range.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually think we saw Krull disappear a lot last year in certain games. I could see him eat into his minutes a little bit. I think that if of the two, I am far more confident in Gus's offense in terms of how skilled he is at being able to consistently score if he gets positioned in the block. So I think there's some things to do there. It may take him a little bit just to get the comfort level against some of these guys that are a little more physically developed than he's used to in high school. But I think he'll actually play really well, provided he can stay out of foul trouble.
So I think it's going to be Blackwell. I think Blackwell is going to get a couple more minutes than, most people expect. I think everyone expected Yalden to come in. I think everybody expected him to get, some minutes, off the bench. But I think Blackwell will come in. I don't think he'll start or get a lot of minutes right away, but over the course of the season, I can see him eating up some minutes from Sejan or Hepburn and with Klesmit. And I love Yalden. Yalden, if you're watching this, don't get mad at me. This is not a shot at you. I think he's going to be an amazing player for us. But I talked with Brian about this earlier. Is I just don't want him to get a significant amount of minutes when he's going up against an Edie or somebody who's really big. I feel like they'd give him a lot of problems, especially in the post. He's a little undersized for the 5, and he's not.
Don't tell him that, because I made the mistake of calling him 6'9", and he was not happy about that.
He was not happy.
No. What is his height, Ryan? Has he told you specifically?
I think he's 6'10".
If he's 6'10", he's fine, because I think he's broad enough shoulders. I mean, he's not going to be above the rim, but if he's 6'10", let me put it to you this way. There's not a guy in the Big Ten that's going to play Edie effectively. He's just too much bigger than everybody.
And that changes a lot for me. I thought he was 6'9", 6'8". I thought that's what he was. I mean, that's what he's listed as.
Yeah, so, I think he's 6'10". I mean, I don't know for sure, but he's changed his body too. People who I think
he looks good. He looks good. He's coming in thick.
He looks great.
A big part of it for him would have been, will he come in with the endurance to be able to hold up for solid minutes? And he looks good.
Yeah. I mean, my fault.
No, you're good. You're good.
We need to get the feedback on him running the hill. I want to hear how Gus does with the hill.
I'm curious.
You're right. You're right. There's not a player in this league that's going to guard Edie. I mean, he's just too big. He's a veteran. He's older now.
And Hunter's gone too. So I mean, the league changed a little bit from the front court, and most of the other guys there that really aren't that proven. So it's basically Edie and a bunch of guys that are kind of interchangeable.
You know what intrigues me with Blackwell? I really like that thought, because if you look at Chucky, if you look at Connor, and even Klesmit a little bit, none of those dudes are a longer physical guard.
Mm-hmm.
Klesmit is a little bit.
Blackwell is.
Blackwell's 6'3", and he's yoked up.
He's big. He's a big dude, and I think that's one thing he brings is he's a different type of guard.
Well,
all of our other guards are. Hepburn's. He's a great defender, but sometimes the bigger guards and the longer guards, they give him some fits. Connor is not really that great of a defender.
He's not a defender.
That's not his thing. And Klesmit, I mean, he'll probably be on the. If it's
he's the most well-rounded.
He'll be on the number 1 guy. He's a good defender, and he'll defend anybody.
Here's what I'll say about Blackwell. He does things to make an impact on a game that will not require him to be effective offensively, which is going to give him some time on the court, because if he can just be a shooter, if he is a guy that can stand in the corner and hit open threes, he'll get time simply because I think he's going to be a plus defender. And I think he's capable of actually bringing the ball up the court in a pinch. And I think that that's one of the areas that with this team, you had Klesmit, who was okay at it last year.
Yeah.
But I think that if you really look at it, Blackwell's played more of that, especially in AAU, of being the point guard. And I think that you'll see him do a little bit more of that to kind of take it out of the hands. Now, a lot of that's going to depend on if McGee can be an effective backup point guard or not. We'll see how that goes. He's got a lot to prove.
Yeah.
See, how I had it was I thought Klesmit would be the backup point. I thought Klesmit, because I felt that towards the end of the year
he's going to play both.
Yeah, you're right. He will. I just felt like he did really good when he had the ball in his hands, like especially like some of those like things he took when he drove to the lane. So I had Blackwell getting some minutes at the 2, and foul trouble and stuff.
They're combos. Both of them are combos. They can play with it.
Klesman will get both minutes at the 1 and 2, and maybe even some at the 3, because right now we don't really have a backup 3. It's Storr and then I guess Gilmore, but we don't want Gilmore on the floor.
Well, I was actually thinking.
I think Winter's going to be the guy at 4.
If you went small, there's a world where Blackwell can play your 3.
Oh yeah.
I agree. He's got the length that you can get away with him, provided he's not on somebody who's lanky at 6'7". That's out at the 3. And there's not many guys in the
I had a 9-man rotation. I had a 9-man rotation of Hepburn backed up by Klesman, Connor backed up by Blackwell, AJ Storr, nobody backed him up, Wall backed up by Winters, and Crowell backed up by Yalden. That's how I had it. I like that team. I think towards the end, Blackwell will beat out McGee for some of his minutes. I think McGee, I think he plays his heart out, but I just think he's a little too small. And he kind of tends to get abused on defense a little bit. And I think that's where Blackwell will excel, is his defense. I mean, he's going to give any guards fits. I don't know what you guys have for your rotation, but that's what I have for mine.
Yeah,
I kind of broke this out in another episode, and it was pretty close. We didn't have a lot of Blackwell because we weren't sure what they would view him as.
I'm just trying Blackwell.
No, I love it.
No, we weren't against him. It was simply how deep of a rotation are we actually going to run?
That's the minutes one. Ryan said he just didn't have very much minutes to go, left over.
I don't think you have to squint too much though to see a path for him to get playing time with Blackwell, because one of the things we talked about, Jason Jordan was on the show. He's a Sports Illustrated guy. He said Blackwell's the best shooter in this group of the incoming guys, right? Yeah. So, Justin, to your point, if he can just hit open threes, if you tell me he can hit 35%, then I would say he's playing this year because he can play defense.
Over under a minutes for him? What do you think? Do you think 7 minutes? That's too high.
I think 8. I have it about 8. I think that's where he'll get 8.
I think that's a good over under, to be honest. Like, I think that's a good number. Because you're high on him, Cannon, and you have him at 8.
Yeah, I think 8 towards the end of the year. I think at the beginning of the year, you may see him get.
There's gonna be a lot of DNPs early,
2, maybe 3, but towards the mid to the end, I see him getting around 8.
Okay. Well, listen, we're gonna end it there. We're at 32 minutes. Awesome show, though, Cannon. Thank you for jumping on, man. Let's do it again, Justin. Of course. Always. I don't know if we solved our DK discussion, but
just different perspectives.
Yeah,
yep. That's really quick. Let's end on that because. Again, if you're in this Locked On community, we're all about just if you have a different perspective, we do respectfully disagree. Let's chop it up. Let's be fans, and let's get smarter from each other. And that's really what this is all about. So I appreciate everybody coming in, doing it respectfully. With that said, on Wisconsin, we talked to Jay Harper today. Got more coming up later this week, as always. Cannon, Justin, myself, on Wisconsin, and let's go.